most goth females I know have been in at least one quite abusive relationship on the goth scene. Marilyn Manson never had to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. He could be a wolf in wolf's clothing, and goths absolutely gobbled it up. In an interview with a rock magazine, Marilyn Manson said, "Every night I dream about smashing my girlfriend's face in with a sledgehammer." But you say that on the goth scene and it's just, oh, Marilyn Manson, he's so theatrical now. How far should an artist be able to go with these shock jock tactics before we realise they're not just theatrics? This is not just a screen persona. This is something very, very creepy. Yeah, we're making another video about Marilyn Manson because I just dropped the last one and about 3 days later the world exploded. And people have been asking me to comment on the whole thing, so even though my makeup has not gone great today, I kind of look like a baby Martian. Maybe it shows that the ripples of displeasure at Manson's alleged conduct have been felt by goths as far as other galaxies. So this video, I don't feel that it's my place to start rereading victim testimonials and just making a big sensationalized thing out of everything they went through. That feels very tasteless to me, and I have not personally ever experienced anything these girls have been through. I don't feel like it's my place to make that video. I will link as many of the testimonials as I can find below and as much info on just everything that's going on as I can below, along with some relevant charity links. But what I wanted to talk about in this video really is the fact that the culture of the goth scene, particularly the goth scene in the 90s, has allowed Marilyn Manson to get away with this in a way that I don't feel he ever could have done without being on the goth scene. And I'm going to use the term goth scene and alternative scene pretty much interchangeably throughout this video. Yes, Marilyn Manson's music isn't goth, but unfortunately for everyone else out there in the mainstream world, they're going to look at Marilyn Manson as a goth. They're going to look at him as a front runner of the goth scene. That kind of makes him our problem. So the reason I wanted to make this video was that I was a young goth in the late 90s and early 2000s. I did, as I mentioned in the last video about Marilyn Manson, go to one of his gigs at the height of his fame. So I can speak to the culture of the time on the goth scene and how it was that Marilyn Manson was able to get away with all of this, because the culture of the scene was a perfect breeding ground for Marilyn Manson and anyone like him to be, allegedly, this sadistic, torturous, drug-pushing rapist. Allegedly. Marilyn Manson never had to be a wolf in sheep's clothing. He could be a wolf in wolf's clothing, and goths absolutely gobbled it up. I mean, there's the quote that's mentioned in one of the articles I've read about this, where in an interview with a rock magazine, Marilyn Manson said something like, "Every night I dream about smashing my girlfriend's face in with a sledgehammer." And if he was like Coldplay or something and he said that in an interview, he's not going to get away with that. But you say that on the goth scene and it's just, oh, Marilyn Manson, he's so theatrical, man. He's just being theatrical. He's being a character. He's being theatrical. And that's how he gets away with it. It's mind-warping to know that there's someone who, even in the 90s, right? I was kind of creeped out when my friend had a crush on Marilyn Manson, because I remembered seeing his artwork on Antichrist Superstar, and the cover of that, where there's one picture and he's got this device on his dick and it goes off with a cable to like an oxygen mask on a girl's face, and she's like suffocating on the smell of his dick or something. That's what it looked like to me as a teenager. And when my friend was like, oh yeah, he's so hot, I was just thinking, really, that doesn't give you like a weird feeling? Like the whole suffocating on his dick thing doesn't give you a weird feeling? But this is the beauty and the darkness at this point of the goth scene, that people are so open-minded to what can be considered art and to other things that are quite tasteless, actually, like the whole Nine Inch Nails buying the Sharon Tate murder farm and recording there. You know, most people would consider that quite tasteless at best, or really disturbing and serial killery at worst. And yet the goth scene is just like, yeah, man, that's cool. There'll be some cool vibes, yeah, there, yeah, it'll probably be a bit haunted, wow. Yeah, do we, as a scene, need to reassess what we consider okay and what we don't? And as I mentioned in the last Manson video, back in the 90s, there was no such thing as cringe pages, and the word edgelord had not been invented. Thank God we have the word edgelord to shut down this kind of nonsense and to actually sort the wheat from the chaff a little bit where it comes to normal goth behaviour, because this is the thing, the goth scene even today, there are a lot of behaviours and things that are quite acceptable, like having a bit of a blood fetish, quite acceptable, having a needle fetish, quite acceptable, doing taxidermy, having wet specimens of hearts and dead creatures sitting on your bookcase, things like this that people in the mainstream world might look at as serial killer. It's quite normal on the goth scene. Going to graveyards to have a picnic, quite normal on the goth scene. But that can make it difficult to spot the people who actually are dangerous. And when it comes to the goth scene in the 90s and the early 2000s, what I want to talk to you about is the culture around sex and relationships. And I want to explain all of this because I feel like the culture of the 90s goth scene around sex and relationships, it was the perfect / most awful breeding ground for people like Marilyn Manson to allegedly find a multitude of female victims and make them very submissive very quickly. Because the culture of the time was that it is not cool to have boundaries, it is not cool to say no, you had to be open to saying yes to everything when it came to kinks, perversion, things that bordered on abuse. It was cool to say yes to those things. And Marilyn Manson, by the sounds of it, took advantage of that to the nth degree, and the goth scene was ripe for the picking. So let me take you back. These days, being asexual has actually become quite a cool thing. It's become quite a cool thing to decide you're going to say, I don't want to have sex. Maybe right now, maybe never. I'm not into sex. And that's fine. And that's become quite a cool thing. But it wasn't like that in the 90s at all. Being a virgin, not wanting to have sex, that was cringy and lame, and you wanted to throw away your virginity as anonymously and quickly as possible. Also, even being straight was seen as quite lame on the goth scene in the 90s, particularly if you were female. Basically, you had to be up for shagging anything that moved. You wanted to be bisexual and you wanted to put it around a lot. The other thing was BDSM and bondage. That was a huge part of the goth scene in the 90s. I mean, there's still a crossover with fetish clubs and with goth clubs to this day. But back then, it was expected that you would be into bondage in a goth relationship. Like, if you came out as a vanilla goth, you would be laughed out of the room. So, if you were in a goth relationship, it would be expected that you would be into and experienced with spanking, both giving and receiving, things like violet wands, which are these kind of like electrification devices. It can just feel a bit like a tingle, or it can feel like an electric cattle prod. Things like pinwheels, which is literally just a wheel of pins that you kind of roll across people's skin and it kind of feels like being sliced open a little bit. Blood play, gagging, tying up, all of these kinds of things that you will see mentioned in the allegations. People of this era, goths of this era, might look at that and go, why would you let yourself be tied up in the first place and hit and all of this? Why would you do that? it was very normal in those days. It was a very normal part of goth relationships. And I'm not even talking for 20-somethings, 30-somethings who were sexually experienced and who were experimenting and spicing things up. I'm talking about for teenagers. Teenagers in their first relationships were expected to be heavily into bondage and the BDSM scene. Speaking for myself, with my first boyfriend, we would cut each other in bed, we would play with the blood, we would carve our initials into each other's flesh, things like this. And that wasn't a weird thing on the goth scene. That was something that you would talk about, that you would brag about. Whereas like, oh, we just had sex and it was really nice and it was really romantic, that would be, oh my god, are you vanilla? Wait, you're a goth but you're vanilla? What? So there was this expectation that you had to be open-minded to the nth degree, and you had to be sexually experimental to the nth degree. Drugs, the same thing goes. It always seemed to be a thing on the goth scene that you shouldn't have any boundaries to experiencing life and to experimenting with life. So when it came to sex, if your partner put any weird kinky idea to you, you said yes to it. You didn't say no to it, or it would be all around the scene the next day that you were vanilla and you didn't want that. So speaking for myself, I, in relationships in my late teens, allowed myself to be tied up, ball gagged, whipped, even though being trapped is actually one of my biggest anxiety triggers. I hate the idea of being trapped and I hate suffocation as a thing, and yet I went along with being tied up, ball gagged and whipped because that was what you did on the goth scene, and that was just how it was. And I was lucky, I was very, very lucky that all my partners were chill and perceptive, and I think they pretty quickly picked up on like, yeah, I'm not into this is not my thing. I'll do it for you if it makes you happy, but it's not really for me. Abusive relationships on the goth scene in those days too were quite common. I've said before, there is a lot of mental illness on the goth scene. We look like outsiders, and people who feel like insiders, people who feel like they fit with the normal world, why would you suddenly start dressing like this and turning yourself into an outsider if you fit with the normal world? So you start dressing goth and being into goth because you're already an outsider. Usually that's because there's something different about you, and oftentimes that's mental health issues. So we flock together. There's a lot of mental health issues on the goth scene. People with mental health issues do not necessarily make for abusive relationships. I have never been in a relationship I would term abusive, but I will say most goth females I know have been in at least one quite abusive relationship on the goth scene, because there is so much mental illness, and mental illness doesn't necessarily make you a perpetrator, but it often makes you the perfect victim. People, particularly, I don't really want to name mental illnesses here, but certain mental illnesses, one of the symptoms is being quite needy and needing a lot of love and a lot of reassurance and a lot of attention. And that is precisely how, from the alleged victim statements, Marilyn Manson would lock onto his targets with love bombing. So you get these girls who are on this scene whereby you have to be open to whatever anyone does, you have to be slutty, you have to be down for anything, you have to be open-minded, and then they meet Marilyn Manson, and he's this huge star. So already you've got this enormous power imbalance. You know, people are going to be absolutely dazzled by everything he's done, everything he's doing, and she will get this impression that, oh my god, I'm like nobody, I'm nobody on the goth scene, he is Marilyn Manson, and he is telling me that I matter more to him than anyone he's ever met. He's sending me gifts all the time, he's saying he can't get me out of his mind, he's obsessed with me, he wants me to come on tour with him. And their need for reassurance and their need for love is being met, and more. It's being overflowed. It's going to become a drug-like fix. And more than that, it's Marilyn Manson who's doing it. It's this huge star. He could have anyone. He chose me, and he's obsessed with me. And that's where he comes from. And then when he starts with the, allegedly, wanting to tie them up and whip them and feed them drugs, as I say, you're coming from this scene whereby you don't say no to anything. You don't come out as being vanilla. If someone says they're going to tie you up, well, you ain't vanilla, so you do that. And obviously it escalates and it escalates, and he used allegedly used every brainwashing tactic out there, from, you know, sleep deprivation to getting them hooked on drugs, to using drugs to keep them quiet and stupefied and obedient, to this give and take of love and aggression. And as I said, I've never been in an abusive relationship myself, but I have seen people go through them, including a very close friend of mine. And it is, if you've never been in it yourself, it's incredibly hard to understand what it is that gets them so hooked. But it's the beginning stages of bad, dangerous, damaging relationships are usually intense, fast, and full of love. So, love in quotations. So these people, they feel, oh my God, I've met the one, I've met my soulmate, this is moving so fast, but it's okay, it's meant to be. Everything is telling me it's meant to be. He's telling me it's meant to be. He's telling me he's obsessed with me. He wants to be with me every second of every day. And that's how it goes for a little while, and everything is perfect. It's the best time of your life. You're high on the natural drug of oxytocin. You're high on the love chemical, the love hormone. And then the abuser rips it away from you very quickly, and they start to just switch on you like this and become very aggressive and very scary. And it's such a fast turnaround that you just think, he's having a bad day. He's having a bad day. I will let this one pass. I will be really nice to him. I'll be really nice to him, and he'll get over this and he'll move on. And oftentimes abusers will play the victim so that you feel like you have to be nice to them. So the typical thing about saying, if you leave me, I'm going to kill myself. This is an abusive tactic. It sounds like, oh my God, well, I'm looking after him. He's the victim. He's so delicate. I have to look after him. I have to be there for him, or he's going to die. He needs me. It's an abuse tactic. It's an abuse tactic to keep you there. And so they will play the victim. If you do this, I'm going to kill myself. If you do this, I'm going to hurt myself, blah, 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 blah. There are so many tactics that an unstable person can use, and any young person is not equipped to deal with that. But a young person who, in the alleged testimony of one of the girls I read, she had been brought on tour by Marilyn Manson, so she was in the middle of Europe where she knew nobody. How are you going to escape when you're starting to realize this is not theatrics? This is not just a bondagey relationship. This is abuse. This is fucked up. But he's dragged you off to Europe. What are you supposed to do in that situation? By the time you realize, it's too late to do anything, and it's terrifying. It's the things I've read are absolutely terrifying, and it is so sad that we didn't see it. And it does make you think, how far should an artist, be that a musician, be that a visual artist, be that whatever, how far should an artist be able to go with these shock jock tactics before we realise they're not just theatrics? This is not just a screen persona. This is something very, very creepy. I think Marilyn Manson and this whole thing is teaching us that we do need to realise there is a line. Do keep your wits about you. Just because you're on a scene where playing with blood is normal, having a huge thing for vampires is normal, role-playing weird, kinky, bloody stuff in bed is normal, keeping dead pieces of animal on your shelves is normal. And we have to realise that even though all these things are normal, there are still going to be predators on your scene, and you still need to keep your wits about you. And I would say, whether you are male or female, because females can be abusers too, males can be abused too, whoever you are, if you're any age that's of dating age, teach yourself about abusive relationships and the tactics used. Just because you're on a scene where it's okay to not be okay, that's true, it's okay to not be okay, but that doesn't mean you have to pander to someone else's mental illness in a relationship, whether that's a friendship or a dating relationship. if people are putting these ultimatums on you that do this, be my friend, be my lover, and or I'll kill myself, or I'll hurt myself, that is not a healthy relationship to be in. You have to know where to keep your boundaries and how to look after yourself. So do educate yourself, particularly if you're young on the goth scene and you're thinking, oh my god, I found my people, you know, I was an outsider, I was lonely, I had no one, and now I found these people and they're so cool. And oftentimes they are older than you. When you first get onto the goth scene, you're around a lot of older people and they can be into stuff that you're not ready for, be it sexual experimentation, be it drugs, be it whatever. And you can have this feeling that, oh, I don't want to appear naive, I don't want to appear young, I'm going to do everything that they're doing. It's okay to say no to all of these things. You know, speaking as someone who never really said no to a lot of the things I should have said no to, it is okay to say no. And if people dump you for being naive and young when you are in fact young, or when you simply didn't want to do a bad thing, then that's on them. They're the dickhead. It's not on you. You're not naive or stupid or unworthy of love and trust and relationships and friendships. That's on them. There are bad people on every scene, and evidently there are bad people on the alternative scene too. As far as Marilyn Manson, and if you're a fan of him, I think it's up to you what you do with that. I don't think it's anyone's place to tell anyone else what they should or shouldn't listen to based on what the artist did. I think it's up to you and whether you have a visceral reaction to his music now, and whether you find you just can't listen to it because all you see is what he did. There's a very good essay. It's not about music, it's about writing, but it's an essay, I think it's by Roland Barthes. It's called The Death of the Author. And it's an essay about how what you put onto a piece of art is at least as important as what the artist originally intended. It basically, what I take from the essay, The Death of the Author, is you can make a piece of art your own and put onto it your own meanings as much as the creator can. So when it comes to this and Marilyn Manson, sorry, this has turned very like theological here, but when it comes to this and Marilyn Manson's music, if this was an artist who had songs that were meaningful as shit to me, that I had so many good memories to, I wouldn't throw out those CDs, because they're my memories that are tied to those songs. Like, yes, the artist was a dick, and yes, that would taint those songs for me big time. But I wouldn't throw out my memories. I would say try and find out the way to listen to those songs that gives as little money to the creator as possible. But I don't think you should have to trash your memories over a shitty thing that someone else did that you have no control over. You know, you spent money on those albums, you put your memories onto those albums, and just see how it goes. As I say, you may find in a week, in a month, in 5 years that you just can't listen to him anymore. Or you may not. You may find, you know what, I don't hear that. I hear my memories. They're my memories. I've had these songs. They're my teenage memories. Fuck you. And that's what you might find. And I don't think it's up to anyone else to tell you what you should do with your memories and with your CD player. So, you know, that's my stance on that. It's like a breakup, you know, music is important to people. I mean, you know, the whole alternative scene and people dressing like crazy people just because they like crazy music. It gets deep in your bones, man. Music, it's going to take a long time, I think, for the really, really intense Manson fans. I think it's going to take a long time for you guys to process this. So I would say give people time to grieve. Don't harass them about not unsubscribing from all of his platforms and binning all of their LPs and all the rest of it. It's like learning a friend has done something as atrocious as this. If you're really into someone's music, it is gutting and heart-wrenching. So give people time to work out their own moral quandary in their own time. But for yourself, don't feel that being on the goth scene means you have to be open to everything that is put to you sexually, in terms of drugs, in terms of nightlife, in terms of everything. You are allowed to say no, and it's okay to be naive. And to not know everything. You don't, this thing that we have on the goth scene for always appearing jaded and cool and like, you know, nothing is new to us, and yeah, everything, I've done everything. I did everything while you were still in bed at 2 o'clock this morning. I'd done everything. It's a very long-standing goth mentality, and I think unfortunately it is what can lead people into situations like this, because you don't want to appear naive, so you say yes to the older guy, the cool older guy, you say yes to everything he does to you, and by the time you realise he's not just a cool older guy, he's a terrifying predator, you can be in a situation where you're very stuck. So don't be afraid to say no, don't be afraid to appear naive, and anyone who scoffs at you, you probably made a good escape from anyway. I will link, as I say, everything I can related to this below. I will also link a domestic violence charity which I will donate to too. If you do feel that you want to help these girls in any way, I think probably that's the best and only way you can help, is to donate to a charity that deals with helping abuse victims like them. And ultimately, huge sympathies to the alleged victims. Hope they are safe and healing, and I hope that no one is presently in this situation with Marilyn Manson or anyone like him on the goth scene or elsewhere, and if you are, I hope you can get to safety. Obviously I think it's pretty well known, but just in case you don't know, obviously with COVID and lockdown, domestic violence is soaring because it's lockdown. How can you get away? Where can you go? You're not allowed to go stay with friends. You're not allowed to go stay with family members. You're not allowed to get these breaks from your abuser the way you were before. And people are locked together. If there's any tension in relationships, it's blowing up. Domestic abuse is horribly prevalent at the moment. So yeah, charity linked below, and huge sympathies and hope to anyone who is in that situation. I'm going to shut up now because this is very long. But yeah, sad day for the scene. So, bye.